After spending over 1,500 hours playing College Football 25, I think it's time that I give my honest and real review of the game, the positives and also the negatives. Whenever it first came out, probably like a lot of you all, I was so excited with everything. It was all new, it was something different, we had finally gotten our new college game, but now I feel like I can review things a little bit more honestly. I've spent a lot of time on this game. I feel like I can accurately break down about everything in it, especially when it comes to the Dynasty mode. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. I'm going to give my honest rating of the game, what I think of it, how EA did, and a lot of things that they can improve on whenever it comes to College Football 26. Now, I would like to start this by saying the game that we have now compared to what came out on launch is a very, very different product. I'm not sure what happened exactly with the launch cycle, how so many things were broken for one of the biggest launches ever, but there were a ton of issues, and they fixed most of them. I feel like if I had to give a rating of what the game was whenever it first came out, it probably would have been like a 6, which is not great, especially since so many of us were really looking forward to it. The reason for that is not just all the bugs that they fixed either. There were key things in modes that just weren't there that needed to be, and we'll start with Road to Glory. In Road to Glory, at the start of the game, you could not audible out of the play calls. You could only go with the 3 that they gave you. That's pretty game breaking, and another thing I don't really like about Road to Glory is your play changes whenever you switch them is going to be the same 2 on the left and right sides no matter what. So at least now you could audible to something else if you wanted to, but you're going to see right after this play that we're about to have the exact same options of play calling in Road to Glory. It is the same plays over and over, and that's a big issue in this mode. I'll get into my favorite parts about College Football 25. It is the gameplay, but there's a lot of gameplay breaking parts in Road to Glory that would just make it a much, much better experience. Like the quarterbacks, don't even get me started. Your quarterbacks throw 30 interceptions a season. Like, it almost makes playing as a wide receiver one of the least enjoyable experiences possible, and you also have to know some of the back-end things about this game to tune it to have a good experience whenever you're using a running back. I mean, that's why sliders are in the game, but you would think the defaults would have it figured out. If you ever see me filming a video where I'm using a running back, the fatigue and injuries have to be turned down because wear and tear is broken. That's something that extends to both the Dynasty, Road to Glory, basically all the gameplays. Wear and tear hasn't felt like it's been perfectly tuned. I feel like they never found the right balance for it. There are situations where a running back could have like 12 carries in a game and he's down -7 speed already, and it makes him almost unusable, but he hasn't gotten that much of a load. I really like the idea of wear and tear, and it seems like with all the tuning EA's done to make the game so much better than it was on launch, that was actually something that got broken. It felt like it was perfect whenever it came out, and then ever since then, every iteration has had it somewhat messed up. Now, I already feel like I'm starting to nitpick, but there's just certain things that frustrate me, like why is the profile picture of the reporter so zoomed in on her face? It feels like such a small detail that I wish was just tuned a little bit better. That's something that you're going to hear from me probably throughout this entire review of the game. It feels like we have a 94% done product, and then there's certain things that just never got touched up. That really breaks my heart because it pulls the game back a little bit. It doesn't make it feel as good as it should, but it is something that they theoretically will improve on in these future releases. Like, they had to get this one out under a certain time frame. They had 3 years. We saw the difference between this and what Madden was. And it's no secret, this is a much better game than Madden was this year, but there's still a lot of things I want to see improve. Going back to this screen though, I will say this was a nice little touch to Road to Glory whenever you compare it to 14. There's one false critique of this game that actually really bugs me. I hear that College Football 25 is so much more bare bones than NCAA Football 14 and it's much worse, but I would actually disagree. I hope I can make my point throughout this video. I prefer this game over NCAA Football 14 for certain things. When I say that, I mean it does a lot right that NCAA Football 14 got wrong, and people are kind of blocked by nostalgia that they just ignore it and act like NCAA Football 14 was this perfect product. It was far, far from it. So with Road to Glory, whenever it comes to the upgrade system, I actually really enjoy how this works. I think they had a great theory in mind with it. I wish that there wasn't certain skill caps for each position type, but it makes sense why there is. And the use of abilities in this game was actually really creative and a great touch on it. I love how some of the abilities function, and they've tuned them to where they're pretty balanced besides a couple of them. What I'm saying is I like the player upgrade system in Road to Glory in College Football 25 more than NCAA Football 14 14. I also like that you have multiple options for different types of practices. It's not the same exact one every time because that was a big issue in the old game. Now, there are some of the practice modes that are just completely broken. If you do rushing attack, it feels like you're playing on freshman even when you're on Heisman. It is a guarantee that you're going to score a touchdown like on every play. I am not saying that the practice modes are perfect in this game. I'm just saying that from the Road to Glory standpoint, it is nice that we have more options than just the same exact practice every single time. I also think that with Road to Glory position battles, they nailed it. They got Road to Glory position battles down compared to what they were on the previous games. They're fun, but after you play for a while, of course, things are going to get repetitive, just like they would have on any other game. The weekly agenda is also a nice little touch. It's a bit bare bones. I thought it was going to be different than this. It would also be cool if there was some way to incorporate real NIL cash and having a way to spend it. I know it's a long shot, but maybe down the line they could do that. If I could buy a crib or something, maybe a car, it'd be cool. When it comes to earning coach trust and position battles in Road to Glory, I will say I'm not the hugest fan of it because most of it is tied to your overall, whether or not you're going to be able to move up the depth chart sooner or later. But that's how it was in NCAA Football 14 too, and I'm not going to forget about it. We do not have high school in Road to Glory. That is a huge difference maker from 14. That might be the game changer that makes you say, oh, I would prefer 14. From a personal perspective though, as somebody that tried to play as bad as I could in high school, make it as challenging as possible, it was always just a repetitive process where I would beat up on the computer, I'd get a bunch of college offers after a couple weeks, and I didn't necessarily enjoy it as much as you would think. Now, if they do it right, whenever they eventually bring it to the college football games, I feel like they have to. There's no way they ignore it. Eventually, it's going to come. If they do it right, it's going to be a great immersive aspect of it. I really want them to do it. They just have to make sure that it's not lazy, which almost feels like most of Road to Glory right now. The feeling I get when I play Road to Glory and when I talk about it, it references back to there's like 95% of it that feels finished, but it just never all came together perfectly. There's gaps in it and it needs to be filled. The foundation is good, but this also goes to Dynasty as well. Whenever you look at the award system, most of this is tied to just how teams perform in the game and what their overalls are. Now, head coach is a little different, but if you get down to best defensive backs, any of these awards like this, it doesn't tie to stats. More so, who wins it is all dependent on the best team. It's really disappointing because I could have a terrible season with one of my defensive players, but if I'm undefeated, #1 in the country, we're still going to win that award, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be tied to stats more. Another thing that they messed up, this also crosses over to Dynasty, is when you look at Heisman race, you're going to see you can't see these players' season stats, and you also can't click onto their player card to see how well they're performing. If you want to see a specific player's stats, you have to go over team, view roster, then you have to go find the player on whatever team it is, and then from their player card, you have to go all the way over to more, you have to go down to stats, and then finally, you can see how they're performing, but it's like a 5-step process for something that should be a button click. That is something that I'm actually very surprised they got wrong because they have a great panel that I loved when I first saw, where you can get a lot of information about a player, but there's parts that are missing, like player dev traits. That is why I feel very comfortable in saying it's a great foundation, but it doesn't feel fully polished. Like it's so close to being there, but we need EA to take that next step in College Football 26 and complete it. Back to my final critiques about Road to Glory. It all comes down to the transfer portal and the options that you get. It is tied to overall. It's not tied to your stats. Like if this kid was a 70 overall with these stats, he'd have no offers at all. I think that was a big miss with this game. If you end up rushing for 2,000 yards as a freshman, but you started as a 3-star recruit, you should still have options to go to bigger schools. But instead you would be like their walk-on there, and it wouldn't make sense. I also think you need to be able to earn skill points in Road to Glory a little bit faster than you already do. If you try to upgrade just your speed, it might take you all season to collect enough skill points to upgrade at once. But like I said, now I feel like I'm rambling that I'm just breaking down every little part of the game. I guess it comes from the experience of knowing pretty much all the back-end stuff. But a lot of casual people aren't going to notice it, and it's not going to be a big deal to them. That's at least what I'm going to feel like once I get over to some of my Dynasty mode critiques. I feel like I need to also boost up positive things about the game. This isn't just going to be what I don't like about College Football 25, because I do like a lot about the game, but it feels like that's what it's turning into. Either way, the transfer portal period. In Road to Glory, this is the final thing I'm going to talk about, the team selection process. I already said the overall affects the offers that you're going to get, but we're going to have great offers because I have like an 85 overall. I will say sometimes the system with it doesn't seem to make much sense. Like if I wanted to go to Georgia Southern, a run-heavy team, why would I be the backup behind a 78 overall? Why would I be a second stringer? It just doesn't add up. I've also heard complaints with not just how like the transfer portal works in Road to Glory, but with how the coaching portal works whenever you change schools, I have not experienced that yet. I'm actually about to film a video where I do experience it, and then I could report back on whether or not that's also broken, but I have heard about it. At the end of the day, for Road to Glory as a game mode, my rating on that would probably be about a 7 out of 10. I do prefer Road to Glory in this game over NCAA Football 14, but there are some things missing that would also be nice. In NCAA Football 14, you could start a Road to Glory with any player that you wanted. I'm not sure if it's because of legality or what, but you cannot do that in this one, so it'd be a nice feature to see in the future. That's all I'm going to touch on for Road to Glory, though. My main focus wants to be Dynasty. I don't have enough experience in Ultimate Team like at all. I've barely touched the mode to give an honest review about it, but from what I've heard, people are actually asking for more content out of EA with Ultimate Team, so that just shows that their main focus has been Dynasty, which they said it would be. I know we didn't believe them, but they did say it would be that, and it has been. I can't promise it's going to be like that with every cycle going forward, but I did meet most of the developers, and their main care seems to be Dynasty, so I think I can speak for them and say that Dynasty will continue to be, but I can't say that for sure. I'm not the one working there. For whatever reason, it's also just hitting me how great it is that we have a college game back still. I'm not sure why that's gone over my head. We've had this for like half a year now, but it is. We have a game, and we have a good one. All right, road to the college football playoffs next. You can see my loss column. Let's not talk about it. It's on the All-American division. I'm not great at the game. We know this. Anyway, I feel like with how they've revamped the tier system, it used to be 3 tiers, now it's 5. It's set up pretty nice. The only thing I actually don't like with it is you can't change your playbook at all. I also found that sometimes I'd turn on the search settings, like search for a tier 5 opponent, and I'd still get someone like Alabama. I'm not sure if that's something they've touched up on, but it was very hard to win, of course, whenever you're a tier 5 school versus a tier 1. All in all, I probably don't have enough experience to really break down this mode, but it has the gameplay aspect, which I really like. I mean, these are the players that need to talk about it. Look at these wins. How have you played that many games? I guess before I touch on Dynasty, I should also touch on Play Now a little bit. Just weird things that I've noticed it has. And it's these minor details I'm talking about that you wouldn't think matters too much, but like, I wish you could put snow at Raymond James Stadium in Florida. They just don't let you. There's a lot of stadiums that you can never give them snow because it doesn't snow there. Their goal is to make this a sandbox experience. I want the full sandbox experience. I would also like in Dynasty mode if we could change the weather a little bit, maybe adjust it before the game, because I never ever get snow games whenever I want them. Before I really break down this mode though, I mean, this is where I've spent 95% of my time probably. Let's talk about Team Builder, the download center, everything in here. I mean, I haven't really looked at the playbooks, the sliders, all of that, but I have looked at Team Builder, and I will tell you right now, this search feature is probably one of the most broken and worst frustrating things I have ever used. If you hit anything in there with a space, nothing pops up. It doesn't search what you're looking for. It makes it very hard to find certain teams created realistically. Now, they did say that they're going to have to get rid of teams that are created with like the licensed logos. I understand probably from a legality standpoint they have to get rid of them, but I just want to find the realistically created Team Builder rosters. I don't care if it's legal or not. Let me have that freedom. I mention that because let's say I wanted to play with somebody that created North Dakota. Well, I could go to search for it and it just doesn't pop it up because there's a space in there. And then you could say, oh, check by state. So we put North Dakota in there, and then you have these North Dakota schools, but it's very hard. Like Santa's Helpers, why would it be located in that spot? I feel like with as much customization as EA thought they were giving us with Team Builder, they missed the mark on it still. I would only give it about a 6.5 out of 10 right now. And that's because even though it was an incredible, very smart decision to put it on the website so we can customize most stuff with it, you still can't customize player names. There's a limit to how long the school names can be. It's very short. It's like 12 characters. You also can't use a generic stadium for any team. So whatever school you replace, like let's say we replace Harvard onto Marshall, you're going to have Marshall's goalpost in the end zone, even though you're using it as Harvard. You're also going to have any Marshall branding from the stadium, which is why we need some generic stadiums, big ones and small ones that we can use. It is literally like those few minor things that I mentioned, and then Team Builder would be almost perfect. Like, it's so close, and I think that is the biggest takeaway I have, is we've come so close to approaching what would be perfect college football almost, and it just isn't there. I would also like it if whenever you're selecting those rosters, the generic ones, it randomly generated player names, faces, and stuff, so you're not using the same players over and over and over again whenever you select the worst one. And just let us edit player names on the website. It is so much more tedious to have to do it on the console. I guess they also missed with this game not putting it on PC. That's another thing I should probably bring up. I don't know what the decision making behind that was. I'm not sure if they're bringing it to PC in the future. I couldn't say if I did. but I don't. Anyway, I've got my thoughts out on Road to Glory, Team Builder, College Football Playoffs, a little bit with Play Now. What's really left is Dynasty. That is the big one. That is what I'm known for, so we got to dive into that. Now, this does tie a little bit into Team Builder. You can only use a Team Builder if you're on cloud multi-user files, and that's an online file, which is very frustrating. The reason that's frustrating is you can't have saves for it, so you have one save. If you accidentally advance the week, there's no going back. You're just stuck in the next week. Another reason why it's frustrating is because it has to be on an online Dynasty file for you to use a Team Builder. If you wanted to put a whole conference in the game and control every team like the Ivy League, you can only use one team at a time since it's an online file. I know it's probably a more rare scenario, but sometimes people might want to put two Team Builder teams in and control both of them, see which one does better throughout a certain time period, and you can't do that. Either way, unless you're using Team Builder or you're in an online Dynasty, I would always recommend going over to single player and also using the active roster. I think there's been some glitches with this, but I have not noticed any myself. Okay, now when it comes to custom conferences, I think they had a big miss right here. I remember them saying that we would have protected rivals, and there's nowhere for you to have those. This is more so just starting to feel like a full critique of the game and what I want to see in College Football 26, almost turning into a wish list, but it's my review. I didn't script anything. I just want to give my honest opinions and talk about it. Besides that, though, I'm just thankful they brought this feature over, that we actually have it in this game. They made it more of a sandbox than I think people are giving it credit for, especially with the recent updates to how much you can edit with players besides the real ones. When it comes to the setup for Dynasty, not much else to talk about, though I have been reminded there's not real coaches in the game, and I'm not sure why. For example, you're going to see it for every school. Like, this should be Mark Stoops, not Joel Burndown. It'd be neat if the player models at least matched them, but we have all the school records in here, which is actually a great touch. When it comes to creating your coach, I love this compared to what we had in NCAA Football 14. There's so many different ways you can go with it. This was a great addition, but there are also problems. We'll get to those eventually, but there is something that really drives me nuts. We have like 500 coach models in this, but there are no coaches that are bald, and they pretty much all have the exact same build. I mean, in order to make this dude large, he's literally gonna have to be like 400 pounds, and even that is a pretty slim 400. Like, we have to be honest, that is slim for 400. Here's another thing that just feels like it wasn't finished either. Coach apparel. We have one option for coach apparel. We can change his shirt to this or a long sleeve sweater, but that is it. There's no hats or anything. I'm not sure why we can't even put glasses on, but we can't. That feels like a process that should be pretty easy for them to have in there, which is why I'm surprised it's not there. Though I do remember the Madden guy talking about when I was at EA, like showing how they scan each object in. It is a process and it's pretty cool to see, though we should have just done it for this game. Like, I want to have a little hat on. I want to have glasses. Not everybody just wears a short sleeve shirt. From there, though, we have the whole world open to us. We have all of Dynasty to look through, everything to talk about, all of my critiques, all the things I love with it, and this is where I'm probably just gonna have a lot of fun with this review. Let's start with coach abilities. I think there are things they did right with this, and then there are things where they missed. I have not been able to unlock CEO in any of my rebuilds because of the unlock requirements. In order to get it, you have to win 2 national championships, but it feels like some of the stuff in here isn't that worth winning 2 national championships and then spending the coach points on it. Like, if you've won 2 national championships, what scenario are you going to be in where you need a 1-year extension before you get fired again? Another one, Dream School. Chance at Insta-Commit when offering scholarship as their top school. You have this from the start. If you're the #1 school in a prospect, you can offer them a scholarship and there's a chance they're insta-committing. I'm not sure how low it is. It might be 5-10%. But there is a chance you get them, so why would you spend a lot of coach points on that? Another issue with the coach points is you don't really have enough. You can only get up to level 50. I wish there was at least a setting where you could remove the cap. That would make things so much better. Some people want there to not be a cap. They want to be able to be good at everything, and then other people, it's nice to have the cap. I understand why they did it. I talked to them about why they did it. It is a great idea in theory, but from a sandbox perspective, there are people that are going to want to do everything, so just have a little setting that they can turn on, and then you can have unlimited coach points. Capping people out at level 50 just means that whenever they get to some of these other archetypes, they're not necessarily able to go down at the way they'd want to, and I just don't like the requirements. I feel like they're too high. I'm not going to talk too much about it though, because I'm not really the target audience for unlocking the later archetypes. I do short rebuilds, and after like 7-8 years we've won a championship, I move on to the next team. I will discuss the coordinators though, and this is something I can confidently say was a great addition. The fact that we can actually choose our coordinators in this game game clears NCAA Football 14 by a mile. In NCAA Football 14, with the coordinators, it was just automatically hiring somebody for you. And also, let's not forget that the coach trees in NCAA Football 14, you went down the same exact pathway every time. There was no unique playstyle for each coach build you wanted to go with. So that is a massive step up. The whole coaching thing, way better in this game than I think it was in 14. The only thing that somehow took a step back, since you can fire coordinators in this game too, is actually designing your coach. You could put glasses and a hat on your dude in NCAA Football 14, but that's it. Now, when it comes to redshirting players, there's a quality of life thing that they nailed perfectly. You can see games played, so someone can play in up to 4 games and then they can still get the red shirt. Another thing I really like that they did was this right panel in Dynasty mode. The one thing that I think is still missing from it is the dev trait. We need some way to display how good of a player they are and how fast they're going to develop. Like now we can see impact. It does seem like skill caps mean more in Dynasty mode than the dev trait though. That was something that I will say time and time again, they have nailed, and this is really what separates this game to me from NCAA Football 14. It is how player development works. I know you can't see the type of overall that they go up. Like, you should be able to see this player's gone up 7 overalls. It just shows an arrow during the offseason. But the player development in this game is so much more unique for each build, and the skill caps make it a lot better. Without that, Dynasty can feel very repetitive, but now you don't know how each player is going to progress. You could recruit 2 3-star quarterbacks, and one of them becomes a 75, while one of them becomes an 88 overall. When you pair that with all the different abilities, it really does make the difference for me. I enjoy it. I didn't want there to be anything like X factors that make massive differences, but the abilities have been pretty well balanced. Now, in looking through all the stuff with the Dynasty, I've actually found a bug. I am able to edit a player's ratings that's a real life player. Jamin Johnson, I could make him 99 speed if I wanted to. I'm not sure why I can edit his stats in all of this. If I go over to Deion Walker, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to edit his stuff, so maybe this is something that they're going to work into the next game. It seems like some of the players could be a bit broken, but that's not important. It has nothing to do with my real review of Dynasty, though the depth chart actually does have a place in this. Let's say I wanted to start Jamarian Wilcox. Even though he's a lower overall, I decide to start him. Well, here's the problem. Let's say that as a third string running back, Trainum got injured. Whenever he comes back from injury, he's actually going to become the #1 starter, even though he wasn't originally, because it resorts the depth chart. I'm not sure why it does that, but I don't like it. Another thing I've noticed is whoever your slot receiver is pretty much always ends up being your #1 receiver in Sim. I think they tune the Sim stats a little bit, but there's just certain ones that still don't seem to be fully accurate. I'm not going to expect it to be perfect. It's a video game, but we are shooting for that because each iteration, each one they release should be better than the last. Besides that, let's get over to custom schedules. Let's talk about it. You cannot create a neutral site game, but they have put all the matchups in for like the realistic ones, so this is lined up to what Kentucky will play. And the only real issue that I have is, let's say that I didn't want to play the rivalry against Louisville for whatever reason. I wanted to remove it from the schedule. Well, it's going to seem to let us do that, but whenever we go back in, it's not going to be there. You can save it no matter how many times you want. This is supposed to be against Arizona, but instead, you just can't remove certain rivalry games, and that means the custom schedule is almost pointless because you also can't change conference games. Now, I understand why you can't adjust the conference games. You couldn't do that on the last one either. You would probably break so many things if you could change those. But this goes back to Team Builder. Let's say I use a Team Builder team to replace Kentucky. They're going to take over all of their custom schedule stuff, so then I'd be stuck playing Louisville every year, even if it's a team from Alaska. That's really where a lot of my frustrations with Team Builder come in. Instead of changing your school grades on the website, you just have to take over whatever the school has that you replaced it with. You also adopt whatever location that school is at. So let's say I did put Alaska in for Kentucky. I could not recruit out of Washington because we have all the Kentucky pipelines. This is just stuff I wish you could customize. Another thing that seems to be a pretty big deal is pipelines, but there is absolutely zero way for you to search by pipelines. If you didn't know as well, the board is only going to show you 300 players at once, so there are a lot more 3-star prospects than this, but if you wanted to find more at a certain position, you have to actually search by that position. Now I'm just dropping Dynasty tips in here and thinking about things that I wish were a little bit different about this game, but from a recruiting standpoint, from a whole, before I just break most of it down, I am so much happier with this system than I thought I was going to be. There was something about NCAA Football 14 that was sweet. It was super quick. You didn't have to think much about it, and I think they have adapted that very well into this game. It's a little bit longer, a bit more tedious, but it actually feels like you have to guess certain things right, that how you recruit a player for each position matters too. I like how the scouting process works. Now, I wish there was a button that you could hold down so you didn't have to hit it multiple times, or you could just scout all your players, especially during this first period. Couple quality life things that they could add. Another thing would just be offering all your players a scholarship. These are things that I've actually sent in a text over to a couple developers just because I want to see it in the next game. Besides that though, I would say recruiting in this game is harder than it was on 14. It's a bit more challenging. I know some people want like a difficulty slider. You're going to have to just restrict yourself. I do that to make some of my videos harder, and at the end of the day, it is supposed to be a fun experience for everybody. Some of the tryhards, the diehards, the guys that love this game are not going to enjoy it the same way somebody that opens it up one time would. You can't make it too difficult, but I can talk a little bit about the transfer portal system. They needed a transfer portal in the game. I just don't like how certain features of it work. Some of them, like pro potential, just carry over year to year. So you could have a first round draft pick one year, the next year put no one onto the NFL, and all of a sudden your pro potential is back down to a D- and players will transfer out. It seems like some of the grades just change a little bit too rapidly, especially when it comes to playing style. It can be frustrating, but it's all based on averages, and I'm starting to actually love the beauty behind it now that I've played it for a while. It's not a 100% perfect system, but I do enjoy the fact that you can get deal breakers, that whenever you're recruiting a guy, if your championship contender drops below that limit, he's going to just have a deal breaker. Those are the types of things that I think as a community as a whole, we were just asking for, and they delivered on, so I'm happy about it. I'm pretty sure I've already said it as well, but I just believe that they have nailed it whenever it comes to the top 8, top 5 stages, the hard sells, the visits, all of that. I think they did a pretty good job with it. Now moving forward, it would be pretty cool if we could have certain visit weeks during stuff like a conference championship game. Some of the bye weeks that the computer seems to be able to use that we can't, I want to schedule visits there too. But as a whole, I really don't have that many complaints about recruiting. I actually think that it's like a 9 out of 10. That is for high school prospects though. When it comes to the transfer portal, things are a little bit different. The transfer portal doesn't feel like it's fully tuned yet. Some years I'll go into the transfer portal and there will be 0 players that would even consider coming to my school at all. It's like I'm using Clemson without using them. Other years, like the entire country will want to transfer to my school, and I think it's because they start out in like their top 5, top 8 stages. You have to be a part of it, but I just wish the transfer portal worked a little bit better and you had some more freedom with it. There is something I do miss though, and that's just being able to simulate one game at a time. Like if I wanted to see what happened here, but not all the other games in the country yet, just simulating this, I wish I could sim. I'm not sure if that makes much sense, but if you played NCAA Football 14, you know what I'm talking about. You could sim one game in the country at a time. Another big miss I think they had for Dynasty mode is you can't hop in and even spectate any other game unless you're controlling it as a head coach. I really don't like that. Part of getting immersed in the Dynasty world is being able to see what happens in these other games. Like I want to see what happens in this top 10 matchup, but all I can do is force home and away wins. If I wanted to see the result of Texas-Michigan specifically, maybe the national championship, a playoff matchup one year, I would have to create a head coach, put him on that team just to do it. There are a few things about Dynasty mode that I feel like are huge misses versus everything else, and it's not going to be the same generic ones you hear out of me. That is one that I just can't stand. I wish I could hop into every game. Another thing that really bugs me about Dynasty, like a lot, is the team overall is never correct. The team overall isn't calculated right. It's based off of like your entire roster almost. So if you want to have the best team overall, especially as you get close to winning championships, you actually don't want to recruit any players the year before, because if you have any 60 overalls on your team, it's going to drag it down. That is why the computer's team overalls and any team overalls in Dynasty, especially after you get a couple years in, is just completely incorrect. It's probably why you're simming against a team that you think is much worse than it actually is, because they could have an 85 overall roster, but if they recruited some 1-stars the year before, they might be rated as like a 77. Of all the things that they patched up, I was really hoping that was something they'd patch. We're going to have to wait for the new game though, and there's not a formation subs option anywhere. I know that's something a lot of people want. That was something that you could do from the menus. You could have it set for every game in NCAA Football 14. Now you have to actually do it inside the game, which is a lot different. Another thing that should have been in Dynasty mode, I'm really disappointed it's not. I don't know how it slipped my mind in the first place, is instant classics. Where are they at? I love that system. I'm really hoping that they bring that back in the future to Dynasty. It's something that should have been in the game, but it wasn't. Back into talking about stuff like the Heisman winner though, the pop-up with it is nice. It'd be cool if we had like a B-roll clip of them receiving a Heisman trophy. That would take a while. It's just future outlook stuff I'm really wishing for. And if this video turned into a wish list thing, I apologize for it, but here's something I can compliment. I really like a lot of the display stuff that they have. The game looks incredible. I also just read one of these things for the first time. It says Shedeur Sanders sets a new single season school record for passing touchdowns. That's a cool little bit of text. And it also mentioned them losing to the Wildcats in the conference championship a week before, so there's some immersion for you. Back to talking about the records though, I mean, they have breakdowns for by conference, by school, so I do like how much detail they have in this compared to what it used to be in 14, but it could also be better with pop-ups. Now we're looking at coach stats. I wish there was a way to view coach contracts for everybody so you could see their record year after year in Dynasty. This is the only way to really see how well every coach is doing. But one of my favorite displays, especially once you get about 10 years in, is this one right here. So it'd be nice to see this for every school. It's also just hit me that as much as I talked great about recruiting, one thing I'd love to see come back is create a prospect. It was in 14, but you can't create any prospects on this game. Like I said though, I feel like the foundation for what we have right now is very, very solid. You can disagree with me, you can be blinded by just pure hate for EA. I feel like I've looked at things pretty objectively. But let's talk about Dynasty history and tracking year after year in your Dynasty. That is something that should be in the game. It wasn't in 14. I thought for sure they'd bring it to this one, but it's not here either. It's something you can do inside a Madden franchise. You can see who won MVP, Super Bowl winners, award winners. So surely eventually in College Football 26, it'll be here, right? Please bring that EA. I guess I can explore the job offers tab a little bit too. I went 8-4 with Kentucky, number 21 in the country, and we've only been offered offensive coordinator positions. This is pretty rough. Yeah, I agree. It's broken. However, I might have spoken too soon. We would get head coach offers a week after. If I go to all openings, we're not going to have a chance at jobs like the Florida State one. That probably makes some sense. But I did like how the coaching carousel system worked in NCAA football 14 far more than what it's like in college football 25 at the moment. Again, it's nice that you can fire your coordinators. You can hire your coordinators. You have a lot of different talent trees that you can go down with different archetypes, but it's still not 100% correct. We're getting there though. We're making progress, and there's a couple things that are missing from this game that were in NCAA football 14 I can talk about now that I do not care like at all about. The first one a lot of people complained about was our dynasty modes are down from 60 years to 30. Not the biggest deal in the world. Who is going past 30 years? I feel like that's a very small portion. I'm not saying that you can't be upset about it. You can be. It's just not something I'm going to complain about. Also, mascot mashup. It would have been cool if it's in here. It's something you play once or twice a year for fun, but it's not in this game, and maybe it'll come back to future ones. Who knows? If there's anything I'm going to complain about when it comes to mascots, it's the fact that only like 50 schools have one in the game. My Kentucky Wildcats are one of the teams that have suffered from not having a mascot. We don't have ours, and we should. I just find that is something that is really frustrating. I also can talk about gameplay and presentation. This is how I have to end off the video because I covered most of the stuff I wanted to in Dynasty. And here's something I don't ever use, but I know is a massive problem. You could say that those intro clips get repetitive, whatever. You could say that team builder teams don't have them and they should, whatever. The announcers, that's something I will actually say is such a valid complaint. I just have it turned off anyway, but the announcers are very dull. I remember them talking about how they pieced it together. They showed us how they do this. I mean, they record each clip so separately from each other and it all just has to blend. It's a tough process to get right, but I just don't play football games with announcing crews, so I don't have it on. It's not in my videos as background audio either. I feel like that would take away from it, so it's not something I experience, but I understand that it is an issue. I can understand why from a presentation standpoint people don't like that, though I do think they got a lot right in this game. It's a fun game, especially gameplay wise. And there's a lot of cool graphics like this that'll pop up throughout playing. It just hit me though, another thing that's wrong with team builders is the team builder rivals all take over whatever team you replaced. You can't change your team builder rivals. It just makes me so upset thinking about all the things that they were so close to getting right with it. Anyway though, over to gameplay, the passing meter, I still use the one that they came out with, the new one. I'm a big fan of it. Here's an interception for you all. And how accurate throws are made by quarterbacks really depends on their overall. We need this one to be placed over his head. It's not happening. It wasn't open. But you can put a ball pretty much anywhere that you want it to. I'm happy with how that worked out. That was a great other addition to this that separates it from Madden. Now, there have been some gameplay bugs, especially whenever it comes to this speed option, where sometimes they would have thrown it like 20 yards behind. And that's something that is extremely frustrating, but I'm pretty sure it's been patched by now, and they've done a lot of work on just patching all the issues with the game. Some of those title updates were like 10, 15 pages of just all the changes that they were making. I mean, they also updated jerseys throughout the year. They didn't have to do that. And even the roster updates were another nice touch that I wasn't sure they'd even worry about. All in all, I think I've just rambled on about the things I like, I don't like on this game, what I want to see in College Football 26, but it's time that I give this a real rating. To me, I really enjoy the gameplay of it. I love how graphically this looks so much better than 14. It was always going to. It's just nice that we actually have it. With that in mind, I'd give the gameplay honestly like a 9, and then I'd give Dynasty probably about a 7. If you combine combine that with some of my other ratings, like Road to Glory having 7, Team Builder around a 6.5, and just overall my enjoyment, I think I could properly rate College Football 25 at a 7.5 to an 8. I'm very curious to hear what you all have to say about the game, especially now that we've had so much time to experience it, what you would rate it. Let me know down below in the comments. And I will stand on this being the best sports game of 2024. It's the best one that released, in my opinion. Even if I'm rating it like 7.5 to 8, it is the best one that we got, and I'm happy with it. There was no structure to this video. I hope you all enjoyed my talking session, and I'm always going to be optimistic about what the future can hold for the series, instead of pessimistic. It's just the better way to view life.